Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Software Success. I'm Ashley Jones, and I will be talking software with you for the next roughly 60 minutes while we explore removing overlapping stitches in your embroidery. So I can't wait to share this with you. I think you're going to enjoy this because it's a question that we actually get a lot. And I don't think that you always have to remove overlapping stitches because some overlap is actually good, believe it or not. So while we're waiting on everybody to join, tell me over in the chat where you're watching from and say hi. And also, while you are commenting over there, we're going to be using buttonholes as one of our examples today. Tell me over in the chat, do you have a creative use for a buttonhole? I've got some things that I'm going to show you that I use buttonholes for, but I know there's many more things that buttonholes can be used for that maybe I don't have an example of. So I would love to hear from you guys. So tell us that over in the chat. So let's say hi to some of our visitors here. So Laura Parks, thanks for being here. She's in Lincoln, Nebraska, and she said she's ready for some quality time with one of my two favorite programs. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. That's great to hear. And you know me, I am all about my software and definitely couldn't live without it. So I love helping you guys and hopefully helping you get the most out of your software as well. So Judy Rhodes from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, thanks for being here. Glad to have you here. Linda Johnson, always good to see you as well. And Marianne, thank you for being here from Ohio. And she says she's having a fall-like day, so we're definitely not having that. So thank you for being here, Paula R. So she said another Dallas fan, so glad to have you here with us as well. And Pamela M, thanks for joining. She said she's having some wonderful weather in Michigan. And Mary Ellen, thanks for being here, Rochester, New York. Good to see you as well. And we also have lots of friends that we recognize. So Dawn from Creative Appliqué, thanks for being here with us. You guys know Reen Wilcoxon of Embroidery Gardens. I always enjoy having Reen here together with us as well. Dawn from Washington State, thanks for being here, Dawn, as well. And so I see some of you guys are already commenting on buttonholes. So we're using buttonholes in our presentation today, but we're talking about removing overlapping as well. But buttonholes is just one of the examples. So, and tell me over in the chat what you use buttonholes for. And so buttonholes can be a decorative element to insert ribbon through. Yes, exactly. I love that. And so buttonholes can make a place to thread ribbon as a decoration. So yes. And so more than just for buttonholes, yes, more than just for buttonholes is kind of what I was thinking. So kind of like Reen and Linda said, so you can use it to thread decorative ribbon to. It can also be used to make like a drawstring kind of bag. And buttonholes, decorative buttonholes, I've even used it as a pocket opening. And so I'm going to share that with you too. So Creative Appliqués, so that's Dawn from Creative Appliqués. So she said buttonholes can be used for in the hoop banner designs. Yes, very good example for that as well. So if you think of any other examples, then let me know over there in the chat. So, okay, so let's get started with talking about removing overlapping stitches in software. And then I'm going to be using buttonholes as one of the examples. So I'm going to get technical and talk about the remove overlap stitches, but we're actually going to create a little project with the buttonholes to make a little drawstring treat bag or favor bag that you can use and decorate for any season. I've got these cute little pineapples on here, but we're going to, you could, of course, yours could be a little drawstring bag for Halloween that's coming up, or maybe some candies for Christmas as well. So, and I'm going to be using buttonholes and the remove overlap feature, but also we're going to talk about applique remove overlap as well. So we'll come back to this list here because I want to, I'm trying to share with you guys the features and where they come from. So, and you guys know us here at Dime, we have lots of embroidery software. Look at all those icons down the right-hand side of my screen. I'm going to make my mouse blink up here at the top. all of these little icons that run down the right hand side, each of those is a different piece of dime software. And you can also see that list over here in your shopping cart. So you can see each one of the names of a dime software, and there's a little one line description to give you an idea of what you can do with that software or what that software is going to help you do. And now I own all of them. They all have a check mark next to them. But what I'm showing you today, like I said, we're going to use the buttonholes and remove overlap from PEP, but the remove overlap comes from several different pieces of software. If you want to play with the features that I'm showing you today, just to see how they work, when you click this ellipsis option here, you will have an option that says try, and you can click on that option to test out any of our dime software. So the buttonhole feature and the remove overlap is in Perfect Embroidery Pro. So you can click the try option next to Perfect Embroidery Pro if you don't already own it and play with these features that I'm using today. You can also rewatch this software success lesson as many times as you want in order to step through what we're doing so that you can practice, you can see how it can help you. Okay, so remember, you can try any of these software before you buy them to see if you like these features. Now, I've got all of these different stitch types on the screen because we're going to talk about remove overlap with these different stitch types. So I've got two squares here with fill stitches. I have a run stitch and I have a steel stitch and a satin stitch. Okay, so a steel stitch and a satin stitch. Those are actually two different types of stitches. And this one here is actually an applique. Now, how do I know that about each one of these? If I go down to my sequence view, and I push the plus sign next to each one of these different types, I created them so I knew what they are, and I can also tell visually. The only one I can't tell visually is between the satin and the steel stitch, and also the applique. But we can tell this is a complex fill. We can tell this is a run stitch. This is what we call a column stitch, where it makes a column of stitches, but these are different types of column stitches. Okay, and we'll talk about that, but really the remove overlap is what we're going to be talking about today. So I pre-created these shapes, but I will show you how to create them. So if you want to play and practice with this as well. So let's go over to a new page. So I'm going to click my new icon to start a new workspace. And let's first do the complex fill squares. Okay, so I'm going to use my artwork tool, and actually a lot of dime software has the artwork tool, so you might already have one program that has this. So I'm going to click and I'm going to create a rectangle. So I'm going to click the rectangle option and I'm going to click and drag the shape on the screen. Now, if you hold down your control key and click and drag, you'll get a perfect square. If you don't hold your control key, you can make it a rectangle or just try to eyeball it as a square. But if you hold down your control key while you click and drag, you can get a perfect square. Okay, so I'm going to change these to a complex fill. There's two different ways to do that. You can do a right mouse click and say convert to complex fill. That is complex fill. You can convert to that in SFX and Perfect Embroidery Pro. And if you do have Perfect Embroidery Pro, I have this effects panel where I can select my artwork object and just click the complex fill. And now I have two complex fill artworks. I'm going to make the second one here red by selecting it and then doing a right mouse click on the red color chip. You can make it any color that you want. Okay, so now to remove overlapping stitches, a lot of times whenever we're creating designs, or if you've purchased from a digitizer that and you're putting two designs on top of each other and you want to cut out what's underneath, that's what we're referring to in remove overlap. Okay, so I'm overlapping my two squares. I keep wanting to say triangles here. Two squares so that I have this area here in the center that's overlapping. So to remove those stitches underneath, in Perfect Embroidery Pro, I can right mouse click under Utility, choose Remove Overlaps. And when I do that, it automatically cuts those stitches away for me. Okay. And so remove overlap is what does that. Now look at this particular overlap here. I actually don't have hardly any overlap at all. Whenever we're digitizing, it's really a good idea to have a little bit of overlap like this, so that you don't have the stitches pulling away from one another. And when you're creating your own design, you can either manually overlap, or you can change the push pull over here in your settings. Now, we're not going to go over that in detail at this time. Or you can also choose your click to stitch option and set it to the type of fabric you're going to do, and it will adjust the push pull. So today we're really just talking about these different ways to remove overlap. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So in case somebody said something about there's not any overlap underneath. And so that happens whenever you click to stitch, or you manually do it, or you adjust your push pull on your fill stitch. Okay. So removing overlap, I'm going to do my undo, and I'm back to 2 solid squares. The trick here is to only select the object that's on top. Okay. So if I select everything, if I right mouse click and choose utility and remove overlap, you can see that it's not even there as an option, because I need to select only the object that is on top. Okay, so our red square is on top of our blue square. I select only the red. Under utility, under our right mouse click, I can choose remove overlap. Okay. Now, let's do a run stitch and also a satin stitch. Now, when your complex fill stitch is the bottom, it's on the bottom, you can also remove overlap underneath satin stitches, steel stitches, and run stitches. So I'm going to create a run stitch. I can either choose my run stitch tool, and I can click point to point, and then do a right mouse click, and it turns that into a run stitch. Or I could draw an artwork line like we just did and convert that to a run stitch in my effects panel or under my right mouse click menu. Okay, so I'm going to make this yellow so we can see the difference. Now, a run stitch and a complex fill stitch, I can remove overlap. So remember, select the one that is on top, and that's our yellow run stitch, right mouse click, utility, and remove overlap. Okay, and it didn't do it that time, but it did do it earlier. So let me do an undo, and let me just see here. Let me see if I messed up here. I'm going to go to my ones that I created manually or created earlier. Do a right mouse click, utility, and remove overlap. And of course it didn't do it. So I could have swore it did it earlier, but the point I was going to say anyway, I'm not sure what changed where it didn't do it this time, but the point I was going to tell you anyway is that when you've got a run stitch, I'm looking for what we were just creating here. When you've got a run stitch over top of another stitch, it's not necessary to remove those stitches, and I'll show you why. So let's recreate our run stitch again. And I'm going to choose yellow so we can see. And I'm going to turn off our 3D where it just looks like our stitches here. And then I'm going to turn on my stitch ends, which is this tool here. And we can see all those little black points. If I zoom in here, you can see that my run stitch is penetrating every, I think it's 3 millimeters that I have it set for. And each one of those points, those black dots, is a needle penetration. Look how that needle penetration actually falls between my 2 threads of my fill stitch. And the same thing here. So it's really going to kind of stitch through your stitches, and it's not going to add a lot of bulk. Okay, so I'm going to turn my 3D back on just because I think it's easier to see in 3D. And then let's choose our steel stitch or satin stitch. Okay, so I'm going to use my artwork tool this time, and I'm going to just create a line with my pen tool. I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to click on the opposite end, and then I can do a right mouse click. So this is just an artwork line. Okay, whoops. I'm going to do redo because I accidentally deleted it. Let me select my select tool. And now I'm going to convert this into a steel stitch. Okay. A steel stitch is a column stitch, but it is all the same width, different than a satin stitch. A satin stitch can be varying widths throughout the stitch. So let's make that and we'll see the difference. So here's my satin input tool. And to make a satin stitch, we usually have a point and a counterpoint, and then a point and a counterpoint. Okay, and you can see it filled it. It looks like a steel stitch because it's all the same width. I'm going to make it a different color here. Let's make this one orange. And let's go over to our tools here, and you can see it says satin in our sequence view. So satin and steel. Okay, steel means satin stitch that's all the same width. A satin stitch can be all the same width, but it can also vary in width. So let's choose our shape tool here, and I'm just going to do a right mouse click in the middle and say add point. And then I'm going to click that point and just drag it up and then do a right mouse click, and you can see that this satin stitch has different widths. We're narrower on the ends and thicker in the middle. You cannot do that with a steel stitch. A steel stitch is always the same width, no matter what. So those are the difference between the two. Okay, so now let's select our steel stitch, and I'm going to run this through these two, and I'm actually going to make it longer here. So I just click and drag, and it'll make my stitch longer. Select it, right mouse click, and say utility, remove overlap. And you can see that it has cut out all the way through both of those. Okay. And the same is true with the satin. So I'm actually going to make this satin. Let's make our point even further up so that I really have some wide satin, because we're going to do a remove over at the top of that as well. So I'm going to do undo. Whoops, undo. I'm actually trying to undo my remove overlap here, and then we'll put our satin stitch over top of it, and just like that. And notice I only have the orange satin stitch selected. Remove utility, remove overlap, and you can see that it has removed that section of both the blue and the red triangle. So I'm going to do an undo, and now this is where I want to change the shape of this so that we've got something to remove. So I'm going to choose my shape tool here, and I'm going to move this up, and then let's take one of our squares here and just position it over top of the satin stitch. And I'm going to bring that to the front, because remember, if I want to remove part of the satin stitch, the blue has to be on top. So I'm going to use my move to front option, and you can see the blue is over top of the orange. If I right mouse click, utility, remove overlap, you can see that it cut that part of my stitching away. So I wanted you to understand that we're always choosing the object on top whenever we are removing overlap. So, and the same is true whether it's fill stitches, satin stitches, run stitches, whatever. Run stitch doesn't really matter because, like I said, it's going to run through. And honestly, a lot of times my steel stitches or my satin stitches are the same way. Let me send this to the back. So I'm just going to click this icon to move to the back. And look at this green steel stitch that's running through the blue. I'm going to turn off my 3D, and I'm going to turn on my stitch points, and we're going to zoom in again. Now, I'm not saying that you should always stitch satin stitches or steel stitches over top of a fill stitch, because there may be instances where you don't want to do that. But a lot of times when text runs across a design, then it is not an issue, because look at all those little black dots. A lot of them are falling in between the stitches. So it's going to stitch in between your fill stitch. And so depending on the design, sometimes it's not necessary to remove those overlapping stitches when it's a satin stitch or a steel stitch over top of a fill stitch. We do it all the time, and I know you've seen it. I know you've seen that outline where the satin stitch goes right over the edge, and we have that little bit of overlap so that we have a nice, clean, finished edge. So it's not always 100% necessary, but if you're ever wondering, the best thing to do is to test stitch. I'm not a master digitizer, so I still test stitch a lot. And that's how you learn. So I create something. Will it work? Will it look like I want? And I test it on the fabric I'm going to be stitching on to get that look that I'm going for. So, so that is a really quick, remove overlap there. It's a really easy way to do it. The remove overlap option is in the Perfect Embroidery Pro software, and it is very valuable. It is really quick and easy to be able to do this, and I'll show you an example of when you might want to do it. This little coffee cup example here is one of my favorite designs. It's actually built into your software. If you go over here to your design library and click on the Perfect Embroidery Pro and scroll down, and you'll see this little coffee cup here. And I'm going to remove the steam. So I'm going to ungroup it using my ungroup icon or either your keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to delete the steam on the top, select everything, and I'm going to group it back together. Control C, or I'm sorry, not group, not Control C, Control G will group, or you can click the icon on the toolbar. So I'm going to copy it, paste it. Now, every Dime software has copy, paste, and mirror image, so you can do those in any of the programs. But here, if I overlap these just slightly like they're doing like cheers to one another, like you have coffee with a friend and you want to do cheers, I select the one that's on top, right mouse click, utility, remove overlap. And if I slide this out of the way, you can see that it has cut out that section. The majority of the stitches, these stitches that are left, they're either a combination of stitches that are running to an area for pathing so that you don't have a lot of jump stitches, and maybe a little bit of your overlay, but it's not enough to make a difference. And so the majority of our stitches are removed, so these overlapping areas are not really dense in this area. Okay. And another thing you might do is add text. So if I click my text tool and let's just say coffee and click apply, and I can make this larger if I want. So if I wanted the coffee to run right over the bottom of this cup like this, I might just leave that. Now, if you don't want to leave it, if you do a right mouse click, well, this is a really good learning lesson. Notice here that I have different text options. That's because I still have my text tool selected, okay? If you don't see the options under your right mouse click, make sure that you've got your select tool, because my right mouse click for my text tool gives me options specifically for my text, okay? So let me go back to my select tool. Now select just the coffee, right mouse click, and under utility, remove overlap. And move this out of the way. And you can see that it did do just as I asked, but I'm going to say this, and I've said it before, just because you can do something doesn't always mean that you have to or you should. It's going to depend on your design and everything. Honestly, for me, I would just let it stitch right over that fill stitch. It's not a lot of areas. It's going to, it's a satin stitch over a fill stitch. It's not going to add like a ton of bulk, and it's going to make sure that it looks great and I don't have any gapping between my stitches. So, so just a little tip there. So when we come back, we're going to talk buttonholes and removing the overlap under the buttonholes. And then I'll also talk about removing the overlap under the applique stitches and how you can manually do that as well. So let's see if we have any questions before we go on to the next spot. So okay, so I see that we do have a couple of questions. So let's start with Cora. Cora says, what about, will it work on imported designs? Yes, it will work on imported designs. That's a great question. And that's what I did with that coffee cup. I brought that coffee cup in. You certainly can do that on imported designs as well. So, and then Cora, we answered that on imported designs. So she had the same question. She just rewrote it with the question mark so I could pick it out. Thank you, Cora. I appreciate that. And then Jenny Wood says, using terry cloth towels, hand towels, I use Create Nap Blocker. Should I use the remove overlap to remove the stitches underneath the design? No, you should not. So your nap blocker is a very loosely dense or an open density fill stitch that you should stitch over top. The whole purpose of that, the Create Nap Blocker, is to flatten your nap before you stitch. So you don't want to remove the overlap, because then your nap underneath your satin stitches would not be flattened and they could work their way through your satin stitches. So make sure you remove overlap or you don't remove overlap on the create nap blocker as well. So, and then the remove overlap is only in Perfect Embroidery Pro. There's other ways that you can kind of work around when you're working with artwork, and I'll show you that when we go back over. But the remove overlap is only in Perfect Embroidery Pro. I see that our team member put some other software up there, but remove overlap stitches is only in Perfect Embroidery Pro. Now, the applique remove overlap automatically happens when we save, and I'm going to show you that, and it is in other programs, and we'll talk about that. So Catherine, so can you remove overlaps in any of the software? So the remove overlap that I'm using right now is only in Perfect Embroidery Pro. I'm going to show you the remove overlap that automatically happens with Appliqué coming up next, and that is in multiple pieces of software as well. So we'll see that when we go back. So very good question. So, and then Terry said, Ashley, do you have a spreadsheet of feature list available for download? So Terry, we don't have that available at this time, but our team is working on a viewable version or a palatable version of what features are in what software, because I know it's questions that we get often. And so I have made a list, and our marketing team is working on making it viewable and understandable, because some of it that I created was a little technical. So we're trying to make that happen. So hopefully we'll see that here in the near future. So I was just scrolling back to see if there's other examples. So then Terry says she uses buttonholes for all kinds of things, including draperies, yes, banners, clothing, outdoor flags, wall hangings, and backs of pillows. Yes, I love all of those. Thank you for sharing, Terry, because buttonholes are super versatile. It's really you can use it for a lot of things that you don't realize. And if you use them in the hoop, you can resize them into a bunch of different sizes, and it recalculates the stitches when you resize. And we're going to see that coming up. So, and then Marcia says, is there a guide that lets you know that you should definitely remove stitches or just the amount of stitches to go by? There's not a guide. So unfortunately, digitizing and creating designs is not always just black and white. And so really in the beginning, you're using your best judgment, but the more you stitch, even if you're stitching someone's designs that is an awesome digitizer, you're going to learn from that. I know that a lot of us like to watch our designs stitch out as they're stitching, and I actually think that that's a positive thing. I'm usually multitasking and don't get to watch every one. But if you're watching someone's design stitch out that has digitized and you've purchased it and you love that digitizer style, they always stitch out great, watch it and you can understand what's going on in the stitches, and that actually helps you learn. And then when you create, you're going to test. But there's no hard and fast rules to everything. If I have fill stitches over fill stitches, I always try to remove, making sure that it's not too dense. But satin stitches over fill stitches, a lot of times, I don't have an issue with that. But depending on your design, it may be totally different. So testing it, if you're creating from scratch, makes a difference. And like I said, learning from your digitizers that are great. I'm not a master digitizer. Like I said, I still am learning, and I watch stitch out other digitizers' designs that I love how they digitize. And so you learn that way, and it's a really easy way to get better at making those decisions on your stitches. So, okay, so let's head over and talk about buttonholes now. And so the buttonhole feature is inside of Perfect Embroidery Pro. And you can certainly create a buttonhole from scratch, but where you can use your artwork shape and turn it into a steel stitch. But these built-in buttonholes under this option, so I can click select and it brings up an image of all of these buttonholes. And I'm just going to choose just a regular round one for what we're doing today. And then when I click on the screen, it drops a buttonhole. Okay. Now this is a buttonhole that has been digitized for this purpose, and I can set the height and it automatically adjusts for me, making sure that the buttonhole integrity is maintained. So I can make this a 2-inch height if I'm stitching with a larger buttonhole, or I can make it even smaller. So I'm going to do about 3/4 of an inch smaller. And you can see that it adjusts, the arc, but really keeping the same width of the stitches in the buttonhole. Now I'm going to start I'm also going to show you, because in other dime software, if you have artwork and a still stitch option, which quite a few of our programs do, you can create a buttonhole design. So by using your rectangle or the ellipse, I'm going to use the ellipse. I'm going to click and drag just a narrow ellipse here. And then I'm going to click my still stitch option. Oh, not up there. That's to input a still. I want to convert to still or use my effects over here. So I'm going to right mouse click, convert to a still stitch, and it runs all the way around the outside. So do you see that it is kind of open in the middle? And I might want to adjust the width of my still stitch here. Let's do a 2mm width. And so you can see now it's open. So you could use this to act as a buttonhole. Let's go back and select another buttonhole that's rectangular. So I'm going to choose the select option, and let's just choose a standard buttonhole here that's square. Click it on the screen so you can see that is a traditional looking buttonhole that has the satin stitches that go all the way across at the top and the bottom. Let's draw a rectangle and see if we can mimic that. So I'm going to choose my artwork tool. Nearly every dime software has this artwork drawing tool, so you can create a rectangle, okay, and select my rectangle, and then I'm going to right mouse click, convert to steel, okay, and you can see how it does something a little bit different, but it would still act like a buttonhole if you did not have this built-in buttonhole feature. So here I'm going to select that rectangle with my still stitch, go over into my properties, and let's adjust the width to about a 2mm. And now you can see the difference in what I get up top. So this is a for real buttonhole with the satin stitches that go the entire width of a buttonhole. You'll recognize that if you stitch that on your sewing machine. I'll make it a different color. But here you can see that I've got something that looks like a buttonhole, but it doesn't have that that satin stitch across the top. Now, would this work in a lot of instances for what we use buttonholes for? Yes, probably so. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how you can create a buttonhole if you don't have the built-in buttonhole feature. So draw your artwork shape and then turn that into a still stitch, and then adjust your width of your stitches. Like I said, 2mm width is kind of what I like on my buttonhole. And you can see that that's almost identical to what these here are as well. So just to kind of give you an idea. Okay, so I'm going to go back to just our buttonhole here, and we're going to create a decorative buttonhole. So if I click on my buttonhole option and I select, you can see that we've got these really cool built-in decorative buttonholes, and these are beautiful. In fact, I used this particular one on a pillow sham. Okay, so it's a buttonhole and then it has these decorative elements, but you can make your own with the remove overlap feature. So I'm going to use the text designs. Text designs are little miniature designs. You have these exact same text designs in Word Art and Stitches and Perfect Embroidery Pro. So I'm just scrolling down. I'm just going to locate that pineapple that I used, but you certainly can use something different. Okay, so there's my pineapple. And if I take my buttonhole, I can either resize my buttonhole or my pineapple if it doesn't fit. And I want to cut this out. Remember, we have to select what's on top. So I'm going to select my pineapple, send it to the back, and my buttonhole is now on top. So I select my buttonhole, right mouse click, utility, remove overlap. And now I've created a decorative buttonhole. I might make that the same color so it's not so noticeable, but it has removed the overlapping stitches behind the buttonhole so that when I stitch this, I can cut to make the opening of my design. Okay, so now that we have seen that, let me show you some of the things that I have made using buttonholes, and then we'll talk about the applique overlapping stitches as well. So here's some of my examples of buttonholes. So this is just a shape, and I put a buttonhole on each end, and I put these words in the center, just using my text tool. And the buttonholes I opened up and I could run my ribbon through to tie around a jar that I might put loose change in. Okay, so that's a buttonhole option. This is a felt tray. It doesn't look like much because the felt tray is just stitches flat. I've got a run stitch on the outside, a run stitch in the center, and look at my buttonholes. They're at a 45 so that I can loop a ribbon around them to form the tray. Okay. And then also, let's see what else I've got here. So in this example, I used a buttonhole and I stretched it the width of this little bag here. This is like a little wristlet, and I actually use the buttonhole as a pocket. Okay, so that's just something else that you could do here. These buttonholes, I used my repeat tool that's built into quite a few Dime software to evenly space out these buttonholes, and I use them for the back opening of a pillow sham. Okay, so really easy to do as well. And then this little bag I used with our pineapple, and I'll show you how I created that. And I thought I had one more here as well. So this little design here, all of these blue lines are just ruler guides you can pull down from the top just by clicking and dragging. And I line these up to get all of these things perfectly lined exactly how I wanted them. And I can run ribbon through this to be a drawstring bag. And it's very similar to what I did here, only in this one, I just did two of the buttonholes pineapples, and then I could feed my ribbon through there. So I'll show you how I created this little in the hoop bag. So that's your project you can step through today. We'll create that. And then let me go under my camera here and I'll show you some of these things that I've created. So these decorative buttonholes here, these are on the back of a pillow sham where, and actually, wouldn't it be it's beautiful on the front too. And so these were done in the embroidery hoop. So I just stitched them, and then my pillow was all sewn on my serger. Okay. So you can use these decorative buttonholes as buttonholes, just as you would expect. But here I used it on the top of this rectangle or this rounded square to run a ribbon through. And then I can tie this on my stove handle to hold my towel. Okay. And there's my little around my jar here, cache for my fabric stash there. And it's just a shape text and then the buttonholes. And then I can just run the ribbon through it to tie around my jar. And then this here, this is just a little in the hoop wristlet that I made. And my buttonhole is the pocket so that my phone will fit through. So just like that. And so I can use this as a little wristlet here. Now I did grommets here, but you could have done a round buttonhole, which really is an eyelet, to put your key fob or something on. And then this little bag here is my little decorative pineapples. And if I untie it, you can see that I did two buttonholes in each one so that my ribbon would run under from behind. And then I have a buttonhole on each seam to do the same, and the same thing here. So then when I draw this up, I get this cute little bag where you can see my little decorative buttonholes. Okay. Now I just did the pineapples. I'm hanging on to summer as long as I can. This is just made out of felt, and I just did like a wave cut on the top. But these little treat bags, like you could put a little decorative design with the plain buttonholes, something for Halloween, for Christmas, for whatever birthdays would all be great example. So let me show you how I made the little bag, because this is my the little project. I like to show you guys a little project to use them. So let's make our bag. Okay. So we've actually seen most of these components. We've used our artwork tool numerous times. So I'm going to do an artwork rectangle. I'm going to click and drag on the screen. And my bag, for me, I made this bag 9.5 wide and 7.5 is the height. Okay. And then I click apply. And then I'm going to double click my zoom tool to zoom out so I can see the entire shape. And notice when I set my sizes, I did not have the maintain aspect ratio set. I can set both sizes that I want, and it doesn't resize proportionally. Okay. So for my bag, I needed it to be a run stitch to to do a placement and then tack down my felt. And so I just turn that into a run stitch. So we want to do a right mouse click, convert to a run stitch. And then I'm going to copy and paste that run stitch and just change that color to a different color so it stops. Okay. So far all we have is 2 run stitches, run stitch and a run stitch. Okay. So that it'll tack down, it'll give me a placement and a tack down. Now for my buttonholes, I wanted them to be a little bit further down from the top so that I could cinch it up. So I first selected my pineapple. So if I go to my text designs, if we go back to our pineapple, which I think is pretty far down here. And again, you don't have to use the pineapple, and you don't even have to use these built-in designs. You could do this over another design if you want. So, and I just kind of did a little bit of a guesstimate how far I wanted it from the top and place that in place. And then for my buttonholes, I'm going to create those by choosing the buttonhole option. And I just did a regular, I think I did the rounded one. I may have done the square one. I don't remember, but I do love the rounded one. And I just click one time on the screen. Now you can see my buttonhole is bigger than my pineapple. And so I set my buttonhole. I was just using a ribbon that was about 1/2 inch. So I set the height at about 0.7 to run through there. And then I can put my buttonhole over and just check to make sure if it's going to be a good size. So let's zoom in here so it's easy to move it around. Okay. So, and I think I needed a little bit, I'm going to do it a little bit bigger, the pineapple, so that I've got room for the 2 buttonholes. So I'm just making it a smidge bigger just by clicking and dragging those handles to resize the pineapple. So, and then I'm going to copy and paste this buttonhole so it's the same size. And then I put 2 side by side so that the ribbon was running behind them. If you do one, it might go in one pineapple and out the other. Is that wrong? Absolutely not. It really just depends on what you're going for. So I'm going to use my alignment tools here to make sure these are evenly aligned. And then I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to copy and paste it again and just leave it by itself, because on the seam, I did not want to put the pineapple because then it would be split between the sides of the bag. So I just did the pineapples across the front. Okay. So now I'm going to, that I've got my extra buttonhole here, I'm going to select both of these and group them together. Okay, and so now when we group, they act as one object. And I'm going to select that and my pineapple together. And let's just make sure we've got those centered on our pineapple. So I'm going to use the horizontal center, and you can see it moved just a little bit. I'm going to select just the buttonholes, right mouse click, utility, and remove overlaps. And there you go. And now I'm going to change that to yellow so that it blends in with my pineapple. And so to change these blue buttonholes to yellow, I right mouse click on the yellow chip. Okay, right mouse click on the yellow chip. So I've got one buttonhole there. And I'm going to select this one and make it yellow as well. Okay, so I've got yellow here and yellow there. So here's what I did for the remainder of the design. So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to do a right mouse click on my ruler bar and choose center of origin. And that moves my design to be 0 and 0. And the reason I did that is because then I know where I'm going to fold. Okay. So I use this blue line. So let me undo that. So if you click on any ruler bar, your top or your left, and then click and hold and drag, you can move these guidelines out. And I just lined it up with the 0 because that's where I fold my bag in half. And I actually just, sewed the sides together when I folded it in half. Okay. So now I wanted the buttonholes here to not be the pineapple. So I'm going to copy and paste this buttonhole again, copy, paste. And I have one buttonhole here and then the other one right on the other side. So I paste another one. And then I'm just going to line these 2 up using my alignment tools. And then I'm just going to move them over just a smidge. I use the control key. Hold down your control key and use your arrow keys, and you can slightly nudge a design. Okay, so I just got that into position, and I'm going to put this one into position too. This one is going to be the outside where it gets sewn to this side, and we'll have another one over here. Okay, now let's group. Whoop, sorry, undo. So let's select our entire pineapple with the buttonholes and group those together. So Control G or either group on your icons. And these two here I need to group together as well. So I'm going to group those by clicking. So I've got one group, two group, three group. Now, to get these evenly spaced, I needed one more pineapple. So now I'm going to copy this whole group, copy, paste, and now I've got another pineapple. To get these evenly spaced and aligned, I just selected everything by holding my control key, and I'm going to use my horizontal distribute. And then I'm going to line these up center, but notice they're not lined up with my buttonhole. So that's not really going to work in this instance. Let's look at bottom align, and bottom align does pretty good, but it's not exact here with the buttonhole. So I might select these with my control key and then move those up and just kind of make sure that they're kind of center with those buttonholes. And you can see these lines on the outside here when I have them both selected. I'm just looking at those and lining it up with the base of the buttonhole. And so now I know I've got them lined up. Okay, so pretty easy, right? Okay, so now let's copy our pineapples. Copy, paste. Move those over here. And then we need one more buttonhole here at the end. So copy, paste this single one. Now, do you have to do double buttonholes? No, I just wanted my ribbon to run behind it so that it wasn't across the front of my pineapple. But you could do these a single buttonhole and go in and out. We're just weaving those together. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Select these here. And then I'll do the bottom line again, just so that it's lined up, but I'm going to do evenly distribute just like that. And then let's select everything because I messed up my alignment. I just hold down my control key and select everything. And I'm going to do bottom align again so that my pineapples are aligned. And then let's select just the buttonholes. And again, hold down your control key and use the arrows on your keyboard, and you can nudge. If you hold down control and shift, it nudges a bigger nudge. Okay. And so there's my bag. And so I can stitch this, placement, tack down, and stitch all my buttonholes. And then when I take it out of the hoop, I'm just going to fold it in half. And then you can either serge or sew that side. Now, I tell you, I like to do as much things in the hoop as I can. So I actually, look what I did here. I actually created a little zigzag on the right-hand side. So I cut my stabilizer, I folded in the hoop, and I even let my embroidery machine sew this half together. And you can certainly do that as well if you want, but it's just as easy to sew it together with your serger or your sewing machine. So, okay, so there's your little project. So let's see if we have any questions. And then last thing I'm going to show you is the remove applique overlap when you have two areas of applique that remove the one that's underneath. So we'll talk about that coming up. So let's see if there are any questions. So remove stitches the okay, so we talked about that one already. So that was one of the last ones. Well, I don't see any other questions. And so I see one here from Paula. She said, does the control and the arrow command function nudge work on a Mac? I can't get it to work. So Paula, try your command key on Mac. So whenever we say control in Windows, that's usually equivalent to command on your Mac. And so the key, try, if you select stuff in your sequence view, I don't think it will work. You have to select it on the screen. So click on an object on your screen, hold down your command key, and then use your arrow keys, and it should nudge it. Paula, that's a really good question on the Mac. And then Marie says the same thing. So the keystroke to use on a Mac to nudge, it's command plus your arrow keys. So good questions. So I love that. I love that you guys are using your Mac. So, well, since there's not any other questions, let's go and see the applique remove overlap before we get done here. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new page. And let's first create two appliques that are on the screen here. Now, the automatic remove applique overlap has to be an applique object. And when I say that, let's draw. Remember your artwork tools. You got artwork tools in nearly every software. And so I'm going to draw two circles overlapping them. And let's select both of them, do a right mouse click, convert to applique. Okay, so now I have 2 applique circles. I'm going to make one of them a different color so we can see what's happening. So look over here in my sequence view. Do you see how this says applique and this says applique here? So those are applique objects. They have to say applique objects for this to work. Okay, so now to remove these overlapping stitches here, I still want to get my placement and my tack down, right? So I want a placement and a tack down, but I don't want those satin stitches underneath, but I still want a full placement and tack down. So all you have to do is choose File, Save As, select your embroidery machine format. In this case, I use PES or VP3, JEF, whatever you use, select it, and then save your file. So I'm just going to call this our circles, if I can spell. And I'm going to just put it on my desktop so I can get back to it. But if you're saving this to go to your embroidery machine, you could save it to a USB stick. So I click save, okay? And then I'm going to close this one out to make sure that we are only opening the PES file, okay? So I'm going to do File, Open, go to the desktop where I saved it. And look, I can even see the little image. It's already removed. So I double click and you can see that it has cut away those stitches from the underneath applique. Remember, we want the top one to be full. Okay, so it's that easy. So they have to be overlapping. Okay, so let me explain that. Let's draw a rectangle. So I'm going to click my artwork tool and I'm going to draw a rectangle and turn that into an applique. So right mouse click, convert to applique. Now I'm going to copy and paste this, copy, paste, and now there's my second one. And I'm going to change the color by right mouse clicking on the color chip. Now, if I have these overlapping in this manner, the blue rectangle or square is going to be removed in this area here. If you have these two right on top of each other, it's not going to remove the stitches underneath, I don't think. Let's test it, okay? So there's no harm in doing all this testing, okay? So I'm going to select both of these, or I don't have to even select, I'm just saving. File, Save As, and let's call this our square. So I'm just going to do SQ. Choose our machine format. This only happens in your embroidery machine format. We refer to that as expanded. So choose your expanded format and click Save. And then now let's close this one so we don't accidentally open the wrong one. File, Open. And for this one, we're looking for our squares. And look at that. It did not remove that overlap because it's not truly overlapping all the way. It is just on top of each other. And honestly, if you stitch satin on top of satin, very similar to what we said earlier, it's probably going to fall between. Is it going to be thicker? Yes. But if you have an instance like this that you need to remove those stitches, then I would manually do it if you need to. So let's do that. So I'm going to draw my rectangles again. So let's do our square or rectangle, whichever you want to do. Right mouse click, convert it to an applique. And I'm going to copy and paste so that we've got two squares. And change the second one to blue. Okay. Whoops, undo. I accidentally clicked my ruler bar and pulled down. Okay, so let's say you've got two appliques, like, well, let's overlap them. Even though this would work, I think this is a better visual of what is going to happen. So let me overlap them just for this educational purpose. But if you save these like this, it's going to automatically do it for you. If you need to manually do it, then you need to break up your applique. So select your applique on the bottom, right mouse click, and say break up path. Here's what happens when you break up path. So take a look over at my sequence view here. I have one applique in purple, one applique in blue. When I do a break up path, it gives me my run stitches for placement and tack down separate than the finishing stitch. So we still get the run and the placement, but the applique, that last stitch is separate. So now I can either change these to separate colors to make this stop. I'm going to change the second one there. but it's going to do it automatically. If you don't break these up, it automatically will stop and change colors. So don't worry about doing it. But if you break it up, make sure you change them, or let's do an undo here. An easier way to do that, when you have this applique selected here, notice my option says change colors. So if I apply that and then do a right mouse click and say break up path, you can see that it gives me 3 different colors. Okay, so you can do that as well. Okay, so now the key here is you only want to remove where the satin stitches overlap. So I'm going to lock my blue one because I don't want to accidentally select it. I want to select the purple one, and I want to make sure I'm choosing the applique. I right mouse click and say, choose the satin here, and I'm going to choose my shape tool and click on our purple one, okay, with the shape tool. Okay, and you can, let's turn this off. You can see it's selected, but of course it's not a great color. Let me choose another color. Let me choose like a yellow or something, because then you can see the line. Okay, so now let me choose my shape tool again, and then I'm going to click on the yellow. Now do you see that? Okay, it's almost the same color as the purple, so it's a bad example. So that is our artwork shape that we drew. The red is the start point, and if I move this out of the way, you can see I've got a green one too. Okay, so it starts and stops in the same spot to make your square. So with my shape tool selected, I select the yellow applique object, and I'm going to do a right mouse click and say add point. And it puts a point right where I clicked. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Right mouse click, add point. So now I'm going to select those 2 points that I just added one at a time and say split line, and then go up here and say split line. And that actually breaks my yellow up into 2 segments. Okay, so the outside here, let me move it out of the way so you can see, and then this yellow here. Okay, so it split that design so that I now can just delete this one section. So I select it and I delete. Okay, now I know that is a lot, and I know that it's more complex, but we're starting to getting more complex questions about things like this. So I wanted to make sure to show it. If this is too advanced for you, ignore this part. Go back, watch, pause, reproduce what it is that you want to reproduce that I've shown. But if this doesn't apply to you, then certainly you can skip it. You don't have to watch it. Do not let it overwhelm you. Watch and do the things that apply to what you are doing. And then this is available when you get to this point and want to do more. Now, remember what I'm showing you here, these overlapping areas, it would have automatically happened if you have that feature in your program. But if you need to manually do it because it's not happening because they're right on top of each other, you can do it in that manner with your shape tool. Okay, so that remove applique overlap. I'm going to go back to my page here. So the buttonholes, the built-in buttonholes are in Perfect Embroidery Pro. The remove overlap is in Perfect Embroidery Pro, but the applique remove overlap that automatically happens is part of PEP, Word Art and Stitches, My Quilt Embellisher, Patch and Applique Maker, Cut and Stitch, and Special FX software. So in the Remove Applique, automatically you save to the stitch file format to create your applique, and it will automatically remove any overlapping stitches. So hopefully that helps. And I know that it's a lot of explanation, but you definitely can certainly rewatch this, pause when you need to pause, or rewind, whatever it is that you want to work with. And so Laura said, is this only in PEP? If you're referring to the remove overlap, Laura, it is in these that I just mentioned, but I'm not sure what else the breakup. Maybe you were talking about the breakup path. So the breakup path is in other programs, and I didn't put that in the list because I didn't even think about breakup path. So it is in some of the other software. When you select an applique object and right mouse click, you'll see that there if it is available in yours. Hopefully we'll get our comparison chart available so that you guys can certainly view that and double check since I failed to put that one in this list. So, and then thanks. And Linda says she uses breakup path. So yeah, great. It's a great tool. So she said break up path all the pieces of the applique items in the sequence view. Yeah. So what it's doing is, the software sees it as an applique object, and applique means to your embroidery machine that it's going to automatically get a placement stitch, automatically get a tack down, and automatically get some sort of finishing stitch that you can change to different types. And so when you break up the path, it's separating out those elements is what's happened. So really great questions there. So just seeing if there are any other Marie says, I've used the lasso option to remove them. Yes, that's another great option. So the lasso tool where you can basically select a group of stitches and then delete. That's another option for remove overlap. Absolutely. When you do that, still make sure that you break it apart. So you're only using the stitches, removing the stitches that are on the applique part. So, and then Amy says, is the manual break apart in Pepper and other programs? It is in some other programs. I don't hold me to this. Don't hold my feet to the fire. But I want to say if it's got the applique feature, it has the break apart because you want to be able to separate those out. But it may not be in every one that has applique. But in your software, if you can create an applique, create it. And then just as I showed, and then do a right mouse click and check to see if you've got break apart or break up path. Sorry, break apart and break up path are a little bit different. So, and then Mickey says, can you make something an applique or not necessarily sew out the applique? So just to do this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could do this and make it an applique, but then it's not really, I think what Mickey's saying is not putting down fabric. So yeah, you certainly could do that and then not put down the fabric. That's another really great point. So hey, when we get creative, it makes things a lot easier, right? So, and then Wendy said, yes, it'd be great if there was a chart to see which can be done in each program. We're working on it, Wendy. So it's such a huge undertaking, but we're definitely trying to get that so it's easier for you guys to pick out what's in each program. So regarding machine formats, I only need FOF VP3. So can I delete the other file formats? You cannot delete those other file formats. They are automatically going to come up every time you save. But what I definitely would recommend, even if you only need VP3, save to the C2S, which is the native format. It makes it easier to edit. It remembers all your stitch types, and then save to your VP3 is the second one, but you can't just delete from that list. But that's a great question. So maybe we need a way to narrow it down. So that's an option. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Again, remember that I know that was a lot. You can rewatch on our YouTube channel, or also our Facebook group has the replay forever of this software success. And speaking of our YouTube channel and our Facebook group, join Eileen on Thursday this week. She's got a cute Between Friends episode planned for you called Witchy Stitches. So Between Friends is our Thursday Facebook and YouTube live. And then on the first and third Tuesday of every month, you'll see me here doing software success, where we're working with software features. So in 2 weeks, I'll see you back here on 17th of September. And I'm going to be using the weld feature, which is in a lot of programs. So we're going to talk about how you can create different shapes with weld, but you can also apply it to your true type text, which is what I did here. And I'm also going to show bubble text as well in relation to this feature. So weld and bubble text. Remember, you can certainly try Anytime software if you want to play with these features, see if you like it. But we'll make this cute little design next week in preparation for our Halloween stitching. So join me back here in a couple of weeks at 1 p.m. Central to see that. Now, your software, if you don't have Perfect Embroidery Pro and you love the features I was showing today, we have our software, again, that you can try, but you certainly can buy. I always urge you to check with your local dealer to see if they've got any specials. And also, when you buy local, that gives you another avenue for help and support. So you can go to your local shop if you've purchased the software for them, and they could certainly help you. And you could take advantage of all our free education as well. If you don't have a local dealer, you can certainly check out our dzgns.com our website and purchase any of the software that we're talking about. So, all right, guys, until we have another software success, I'm going to say bye for now. And thank you all for joining me.